Cool, all right, we're going. I'm not even going to trim, maybe I will trim this video, I don't know. Hi guys, how are you? So, hey, it's Wednesday morning, and I just had a great conversation with the patient, and she said, you need to do a talk on this, and I thought, well, maybe I won't necessarily do a talk on this, I'll just do a really short video. So in my office I do a lot of education, we do a lot of education on immune system function, and ultimately we do that because I've had such a large number of people over the years who have been cancer patients, so that's kind of why we focus on so much immunity. Obviously this time right now the world is looking at immunity in a whole different light. And so I wanted to talk just briefly about this one thing that relates so much to your functional capacity with your immune system, but is often overlooked because people don't really know how to associate impacts in this area with what the absolute outcome is. In other words, the area that I'm talking about is stress. It's actually neurological stress, and it's kind of a hard thing to quantify, right? Like I can't tell you that by putting 8 minutes of stress in your life that you've just reduced your functional capacity by 10%. I mean, we don't have that. It's not quantitative. So we can qualify it simply by an anecdotal message or phrase that you've all likely used, which is, oh, I'm sick. I know I was all stressed out and just kind of run down emotionally and physically, and I got sick. So that's something that I think people typically understand, and you can take that from a kind of high level idea and say, yeah, I can understand how it happens because it's happened to me before. Why might be difficult. So, we were talking about this and I thought, well, it's probably a good thing because it's an interesting thing. Like the AJC puts out an article, I think some guy wrote an article just the other day, maybe yesterday, saying, I got COVID and this is what you have to know. It was horrible. It was awful. It was this and this and this and this. And then if you hear that and believe that that would be you as well, you've just upped your stress level already, especially if you think, okay, well, I'm going to be on a ventilator. So now your stress level goes up, right? And then you get all of these ideas that then start to bring you to this place of concern that's a greater concern. And by being in a place of greater concern, the likelihood of you achieving that level of illness goes up because you're weakening your defense mechanisms. So, and it's that whole idea like of a placebo effect. Like, some people like to discount placebo. But that's really stupid to do because the reality is when you actually show benefit from placebo, what you're doing is you're identifying that there's an inherent ability to control at some level your capacity to heal. And that's placebo. And I honestly believe that playing to placebo is one of the most important things that we can do. Because what that does is it tells us that we can reduce the medicalization of people by allowing them to create health from inside, whether it be manifested here or not. So some people would discount the actual diagnosis up front and say, well, then they must not have really had because they were able to gain positive result from placebo. Well, that's not true. You guys should do some research. You'd be amazed at how many sham surgery placebo research studies in randomized clinical trials have demonstrated greater response and more positive outcomes than actual surgeries. Especially, what's amazing to me is when you look at actually orthopedic surgeries where you can say, I have a quantifiable problem, I can see this thing, I have a quantitative problem as well, I can measure this thing, I know that it's going to require surgery to reduce this meniscal tear of 18 millimeters. And then you put a whole bunch of people that have very similar stories and very similar clinical diagnoses into a group of control, into sham surgery, and into real surgery. And what's crazy is how well the placebo in these types of studies always does relative to both control and to regular full surgery. Placebo really matters. And so, we were talking, I said, well, I think some people have a hard time really, getting to the detail of what it is that makes it happen. And so then I just said, it's a simple process to talk about it. Where does stress start? And so most people will get that, okay, it starts in my brain. Well, what does stress affect? Well, everything. Yeah, stress affects everything, right? High levels of stress, nervous breakdown, it will actually cause death in people. Not usually immediate, it's more of a kind of a deleterious effect over some window of time. So when you look at that, it's like, okay, so I've got these pretty significant concerns when I consider that stress manifests in the brain. The brain controls everything in the body. Therefore, by affecting the one thing that controls everything, I now have impacted negatively everything. Real simple. So when I consider this current, state of affairs here, the virus thing, COVID times, which to me still is just ridiculous, of course. You get that about me. Way overblown. Again, looking at comorbidities and how that dramatic and very specific comorbidities of inflammatory disease like diabetes and heart disease, those are by far the most significant. I've been amazed at how many people with autoimmune conditions or immunosuppressant conditions or immunocompromised conditions actually are starting to look like they aren't necessarily at that much greater compromise, but rather really just diabetes and heart disease really tend to fly up to the top of the list for the significance of comorbidities. I look at that and I think, okay, so we really shouldn't be freaking out over this. If we have those comorbidities, we should be significantly more cautious, not freaking out. But then at the same time, we look at how much of those two diseases are considered lifestyle mediated conditions, and it's absolutely significant. We're 6 months into this. If you had started changing your lifestyle at the start of this, if you had gone hardcore, and I can tell you we've reversed type 2 diabetes in people with our 60-day turnaround, which is really a healthy version of keto. I mean, literally absolutely reverse type 2. So if that's the case, if we've seen vascular conditions improve because of the de-inflammation of the vascular wall of our arteries, and we've seen it happen in less time than 6 months, but typically more like 6 to 12 months, and in some cases, get out to 2 years. Why aren't you starting now? Why aren't you taking it into your own hands? Why? So you should be taking and managing your stress. So when you read about how bad it was for somebody, don't assume it's going to be the same for you. Assume that you're going to go do everything you should to be healthy and rely on the functional capacity of the human body that has healed itself from every known condition on the planet in some case. In every disease, there's a case. So for that to be understood, then gives you the opportunity to be confident, but through decisions. Not confident while sitting with your head buried in the sand. That's not confidence. So just wanted to really hammer home this idea for you today, because I think what's really bothering me more than anything are the number of freaked out people, that think my mask is going to save you. We have someone, I've got tons of people I know who've got positive tests. And I've got a few, like I think I told early on, I know someone who died, early on. I had that relationship. But I'll tell you that person didn't have a whole lot of capacity to outlive many conditions. Influenza would have taken this person. I mean, it's just a matter of, when were they going to get sick? But then I've had other people who've walked through this completely free of anything whatsoever. And that's the average person I know, because the average person I know subscribes to the things that I subscribe to, which relate to strong here, wise here, meaning what goes in the mouth. So just as I see where we sit and I see people saying, you're walking the wrong way down the aisle, why is your mask not on? And, that's a position of fear all day long. All day long, it's a position of fear. Doctors in the ER telling my friends who've been in, oh, you don't have to worry about that. You're not going to give it to somebody just because you sat next to them. But like the average person thinks you will. That's just, I don't, like, this is a virus. It does what a virus does. Is it transmissible? Yeah. Is it just going to float in the air and then into someone else's mouth? Not enough to ever create any kind of response whatsoever. I mean, it's not an inoculating effect. It surely has an infectious effect. And I've talked about this forever. You are in charge of your own potential to be infected. You have complete control over getting infected or not. It's just that you're not as cautious as you think you are. That's all it comes down to. So, All right, back to being smart though. So if you want to be cautious with something, be cautious with the way you spend your life, the way you propagate decisions for yourself. All right, cool. Hey, look, you might think that I'm like pretty aggressive with this stuff. I have been for 20 years. I think health matters. I've been preaching the same thing for 20 years. Health matters, and 99% of the population fails at making a wise decision every step of the way in any single day. 99% are going to fail at least once every single day at wise decisions as it relates to your health. You know, and I do too. I'm not saying that I'm not in that group, but I'm saying if you don't think about it, where do you think you are? All right. Love you. And as you guys know who know me, I believe in creation. And so if you don't believe in that, you might find ways to argue against what I'm saying, but I'm going to tell you that even if you believe in evolution, it would be weird to not consider how we've evolved. All right, cool, thanks.